Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about. I'm a veteran, Afghanistan war veteran. I do have a diagnosis of PTSD, of which I've been seeking treatment now for the last several years. I am just going to document here some of the issues I've run across with the VA. So I went through a group called Military One Source. I had not had my VA claim accepted yet. So I contacted Military One Source. They got me almost well, I think it was over a full year's worth of appointments that I was able to do with a therapist. This was before I had my diagnosis. I went to the therapist, started, getting treatment. Things were going well. My VA claim at the end of it got accepted. Not a problem. I was just going to switch my doctor over to the VA and start seeing their therapists. So it took me a couple months to set that up through the VA, about 2-3 months. There were a couple months I didn't have treatment, but I did. Things were progressing, so I was fine. I started seeing my therapist. Well, that went on for quite some time, and then in September of 2019, my therapist they weren't returning my calls. I would send emails trying to get, schedule my next appointment. They weren't being responded to. So it finally took me one day of calling them, sitting on the phone, and pretty much refusing to be called back. I said, look, I just want to talk to somebody. Put me on hold. And finally, what it came down to was my therapist had left the VA provider network that they were using, which was fine. Now I got to go back to the VA. So this was September. I contact the VA. They told me, well, you've got to come back in for your normal physical, but we have to do an appointment with your primary care physician to get this going. So okay, they scheduled me for end of November for lab work. Did that. I was supposed to have an appointment 2 weeks later. That got canceled because of the holidays. They moved it to early January. Early January comes around. They cancel my appointment, push it another week back. Cancel that appointment, push it another week back. So finally, end of January, I get in to see my primary care provider. And, everything was fine. They looked at me for 15 minutes and said, yeah, okay, you can go see your therapist. Or we'll get you a new therapist. So things still progressing. February rolls around, they get me an intake. Now, you have to understand, the Loma Linda VA is my VA. That's over 100 miles away from me. So if I go there, my whole day is shot. There is a clinic near me that's about 50 miles that I can go to, but again, that's still a considerable amount of time that I'm out of work. When I was using my therapist, I was using my phone just like this and doing tele appointments, and that worked out very well. So in February, I've got this intake tele appointment. I go through it. Everything is fine. They scheduled me for my first real appointment with my therapist, and that was going to be on March 26th. Coronavirus hits. I don't even, it gets canceled. And when I say canceled, I'm trying to call in on it at 09 in the morning, and no one's answering. And I call the VA to say, hey, I can't get in touch with these people. And they say, oh, yeah, your appointment's been canceled. Then 2 hours later, I get a text message telling me that my appointment's been canceled. So very annoying. But again, if they reschedule, I'm fine. Nothing. Over 2 weeks goes by and no rescheduling. So finally, on the 16th of April, I contact the VA through the secure messaging and say, hey, this has not been rescheduled. I need an appointment. They then tell me, oh, I've got to start all over. I've got to go back to my primary physician, the same one who authorized me to do all this in the first place. And I got to go back and drive down there, see them for, again, 15 minutes for them to look at my record and say, yeah, you've got a diagnosis of PTSD. You can go see a therapist. And I messaged them back and said, this is ridiculous. I've already done that. Are you seriously telling me I got to start all the way back at square one? And yeah, that was their answer. Yeah, you got to start all the way back. It's like, this is how difficult it is. Now, there are veterans I know who either are not in treatment or are more severe cases than I am. If it's this hard for me to get an appointment, I can only imagine those who don't have a diagnosis, who, haven't already sought out other treatment elsewhere. This is why the VA is having the problems that it is of losing veterans. You absolutely feel like a cog in the machine. Now, there are plenty of therapists right here near me that I should be able to go in and see. Obviously, with the coronavirus, I should be able to just call them and schedule an appointment. But the VA, it has this antiquated bureaucracy that I've already been approved for this treatment. Why do I have to go all the way back to the beginning? It just makes no sense. So when you hear that the VA is failing, here's what I'll say. The people that I've met at the VA that work there, they're good people, but they're dealing with a bloated bureaucracy. And that bureaucracy is getting in the way of people being able to get help. And when we're losing over 20 veterans a day, we have got to cut through this red tape. This should not, when a veteran says, I want to see a therapist, it should be days, not weeks, not months. We should be able to respond to them in days. I'm very fortunate I've, been very proactive on my treatment, that I've, come up with several, plans for the symptoms that I show, but other people are not that proactive. Other veterans are instead self-medicating, and that is a huge problem. So I just wanted to talk about that today.